Sherlock Holmes in Executioners of Essex by Scott McQuaid, produced by Pop-Up Theatre.
I caught a flash of the blade as it shot by me, followed by the familiar swoosh sound cutting through the air. Sherlock flanked to one side as he lunged forward, thrusting the sword, punching through. Ah, Holmes, I do wish you wouldn't kill my newspaper before I've had a chance to read it.
Read the news and you will be misinformed.
And if I don't read it?
Then you will be uninformed.
So, what's the alternative?
Read between the lines. Don't follow the rhetoric of others.
The date was December the 6th, 1995, and the London streets were filled with an array of endless twinkling lights. The Christmas season was in full swing, and there had been a blanket of snow that year. Holmes, must you swing that sword about in the living room? It's very distracting.
That is the point of the exercise, to distract me.
Distract you from what?
Boredom. Every day is the same. People going about their business, living their mundane existence with no crime to keep it interesting.
Yes, it sounds awful. A society of peace.
Your mocking tone will be regretful, Watson. Everything in the world requires a balance. Too much work does not equate to more play. More play does not come from less work. If you want to feel great pleasure, you must learn how to deal with great pain. Otherwise, you will not be able to differentiate one from the other.
Crime hasn't gone away, Sherlock. It's still very much here in London.
Oh, burglary, grievous bodily harm, adultery, traffic offences. This is all merely a side order to a main meal that is yet to be presented.
Well, they say a good meal is worth waiting for.
Ah, yes, waiting. The only thing I detest more than people.
Yes, I know. I received your Christmas card.
Christmas? That's the cause of it. All this mythical Christmas spirit, peace on earth, goodwill to men.
And let's not forget the carolling.
You're enjoying this, aren't you?
Immensely, yes.
Mrs. Hudson!
You yelled, Sherlock?
Don't you usually have a tea trolley on cue?
Oh, I haven't got time for that, dear. I've got to get up to Carnaby Street. I need to buy something expensive for Mrs. Turner next door. She hasn't been feeling too...
Bored!
Oh.
You see, it's this kind of meaningless conversation that dilutes the world.
Well, that's one less Christmas gift I have to get now. Goodbye.
Oh, watch yourself out there, Mrs. Hudson. The pavement is very slippery.
It most certainly is.
Lestrade, finally! What have you got?
Excuse me?
Don't just stand there like a bland piece of furniture. What is it?
What is what?
The case!
Oh, I don't have a case. I just stopped by to wish you a Merry Christmas.
Oh, God!
Yeah, you see, me and the missus are going away for the holidays, so I thought I'd drop this off.
Ooh, brandy. Very nice.
It's just a small token of thanks for all the help you've given us at Scotland Yard this year.
An entire year's thanks in one small bottle.
That's very kind of you, Lestrade. Don't mind him. He's just a bit grumpy because no psychopaths have been rampaging in the streets of late.
Yes, it's been nice. Crime has certainly declined in London this year. Well, I suppose I'll better get going. It's starting to snow again.
Just a minute, Lestrade. You said crime has declined in London. This would indicate that crime is on the rise, or at least steady, elsewhere.
Well, of course, crime doesn't take a holiday, as they say.
Indeed. So where is it vacationing at the moment?
Well, I have been cooperating with the Essex police on a triple homicide.
Go on.
Well, this morning, a Range Rover was discovered down a small farm track in the village of Rettendon in Essex. Inside the car were the bodies of 3 drug dealers. I mean, it's not my jurisdiction, but if you want, I could probably get you on board as a consultant.
Looks like Christmas has come a little earlier this year, Watson.
Holmes Holmes and I travelled down to Chelmsford in Essex. Holmes sat in silence, staring out of the window, smoking his pipe. I was reading a local paper from Essex that had been left on the seat by a previous commuter. The paper's front byline read, "Trio lured to their deaths." Police still seeking clear motive for Rettendon slaughter. It appears the police have no leads.
Yes, Watson, that would be the general assumption from such a statement.
You know, I haven't been to Essex for years. I remember as a child going to the beach in Southend. Ah, such fond memories. I say, Holmes, did you hear me?
Unfortunately, I did. I was merely ignoring you in the hope that you would cease communication.
Oh, really, Holmes? You know, you can be quite rude at times.
Well, I'm glad my efforts have not gone unnoticed.
We remained in silence for the rest of the journey. I rather thought Holmes enjoyed this awkwardness. As we arrived at the crime scene, a crowd of local residents from Rettendon had gathered to catch a glimpse of the horror show that occurred the night before. It was a cold, frosty day, with a layer of snow upon the ground. As we approached the crime scene tape, creating a barrier, an eager policeman stepped forward and said,
"Hang on, lads. Where you going?"
Then, Detective Superintendent Ivan Dibley, head of the murder squad at the Essex Police, abruptly intervened.
It's all right. They're with me. You're the consulting detectives with Inspector Lestrade, right?
Correct. I'm Dr. Watson, and this is Sherlock Holmes.
He speaks very highly of you both. Anyway, I'm Detective Dibley. I guess we'd better get straight to it. Follow me. They're at the end of the track near the field. I have to say, as far as murders go, you don't get any more serious than this.
Oh, what's that?
It's okay, Dr. Watson. It was just a stick.
Oh, yes, of course. The Range Rover that had become the Essex boys' tomb loomed ahead of us. Blood dripped from the car, while the three bodies inside displayed a picture of complete carnage. The scene was one of blood splatter, brain matter, and shotgun cartridges.
Well, I've been on the force for 32 years, and I've never seen anything like it. Still, I've only got another 4 months, then I'm retiring. I just want the simple life.
Life is simple, but people insist on making it complicated.
Who discovered the bodies?
2 local farmers this morning. Now, this road is Workhouse Lane, and as you can see beyond the gate, there's a field. We think it's a drop spot for drug smuggling.
Have you managed to identify the victims yet?
Yes. Tony Tucker, Patrick Tate and Craig Rolfe. Now, they're all very well-known drug dealers in Essex. In fact, our drug intelligence unit had them under surveillance.
Did they?
Sherlock pulled out his magnifying glass and stuck his head inside the car. He carefully examined the bodies.
So we think the prime target was Tate, and he took 3 bullets. Then the shooters moved on to the driver, Rolfe, who was shot twice in the head, before then killing Tucker next to him in the passenger seat. And he took 3 shots to the head. We think the gunmen were waiting in the bushes on either side. The guns that we used were 12-bore shotguns. Like I said to the press, it looks like a gangland murder.
Wrong, on all accounts.
Excuse me?
This was not a murder, but more of an execution. The driver, Mr. Rolfe, was the first target. Why? Because the engine was still running and his foot remains on the pedal, so taking him out would eradicate any attempt of a getaway. In these circumstances, there are but 2 impulsive instincts: fight or flight. Mr. Tate chose the latter, as seen by the obvious position of his body, slumped across the back seat on the passenger side. After Mr. Tate saw his friend's head blown to pieces, he immediately moved away from the killer, trying to escape. The gunman saw this and acted accordingly. He shoots Tate in the stomach. This was to subdue him. He then takes aim for the kill shot. But he misses. The bullet grazes the back of his head. The killer then leans into the vehicle and presses the barrel against the back of Mr. Tate's head, making sure he doesn't miss again.
What about the other fellow sitting in the passenger seat? What's he doing while all this is going on?
I'm glad you asked, Watson. Mr. Tucker did neither fight or flight, but instead froze. This deduction is made by his seemingly casual position. Look at his legs crossed beneath him and how he's still clutching his mobile phone in hand. This was his position before, during, and after the shooting. He had simply gone into shock. After shooting Mr. Tucker in the back of the head from his current position, he then maneuvered around the vehicle to the near side. It is clearly indicated from these footprints. There, he shoots Mr. Tucker twice more.
A little bit overkill, wouldn't you say?
I'd say he was sending a message.
To who?
To the underworld. Stay in your lane. This killer is not some local gangster. It's not amateur hour. This is the work of a professional, somebody that is proficient with a semi-automatic pump-action shotgun.
That's not possible. Our forensic team said it was a 12-bore shotgun.
Yes, well, it's okay to disagree with me. I can't force you to be right. A standard 12-bore shotgun can be reloaded in about 2 seconds, so with 8 shots fired, this gives our victims a collective time of 16 seconds to react as the gunman reloads. Yet the men have hardly moved from their relaxed postures. Whereas a pump-action shotgun has a reloading time of 0.6 seconds. That results in a 4.8-second total reloading time, leaving our victims with much less time to react.
Yes, but if there were 2 gunmen... then...
There wasn't. If you want further evidence to attest to this, then check the shotgun cartridges on the floor. The single indentation on the brass headrim is consistent with the extraction method utilised in semi-automatic pump-action shotguns. Another thing you may not have noticed is that there were 8 shots fired, but only 7 cartridges are present, meaning the 8th one is probably still in the gun.
Find the cartridge and you'll find your shooter.
But again, what if there were 2 gunmen?
Oh, Detective Dibley, why do you continue to question my methods when your own assumptions have more holes than a tea bag? Look at the vehicle in question. There are no windows shattered from a shotgun blast.
So?
So, the gunman shot them all from an open door.
So the 3 victims must have known the gunman, and that's why they opened the door to greet him.
Not exactly, no, Watson. I surmise that the gunman was travelling with them. He sat beside Mr. Tate, and looking at the position of Mr. Tate, there could have only been one other passenger in the back. So, the mystery man gets out of the back, keeping the door open, which then illuminated his targets using the inside car light. He then picked up his hidden shotgun and proceeded to execute them.
Then where did he go?
Across the field. There are no footprints leading away from the vehicle back up to the main road, so he only has the field to go by.
I'll get my men to search.
Please do. And Detective Dibley, could you provide me with a list of acquaintances for these 3 corpses?
Yeah. Constable Bird! Could you make a copy of all contacts of Tate, Rolfe and Tucker for Mr. Holmes here, please?
And any eyewitness reports?
You heard him, Constable.
Yeah, sure.
You said they were drug runners.
Well, in a sense, yes. I mean, they were hardly mafia-style gangsters. They didn't have any hidden warehouses or anything.
Where did they distribute their drugs?
Nightclubs. Their focus seemed to be Raquel's.
Then we shall pay a visit to the nightclub.
I'd be careful. It's a rather unsavoury place. Yeah, come on. Let's head back to the station for a cuppa.
Hello, please. Yeah, what's the problem, sir? We just go down our farm track. Yeah, that was 20 seconds. Just come across the Range Rover with 2 people in it. Yeah, we got 3 officers. I don't know what's happening because I didn't blow those over. It's just White House Farm Records. White House Farm Records. Look at the thing that was shot.
Holmes and I sat at Essex police station listening to the recording of the phone call from a local farmer who had discovered the 3 men dead in the Range Rover.
White House Farm Records. Look at the thing that was shot.
The cell phone records show the 3 men stopped using their phones around 7 p.m. This would indicate that they were shot sometime around then. That means the bodies of the men had been lying in the car for around 13 hours. So why didn't the car have frosted windows? One would think laying there all the time in the snow all night, there would be some indication of frost.
There was a hole in the window on the passenger side of where Mr. Tate's head lay. Now, frost forms on the inside of a vehicle because of the humidity inside, but once there is a vent, an opening in the car allowing outside elements in, no frost will occur due to the temperature remaining the same both inside and out. Besides, how do we know they were killed at this time? Without the pathologist's report of a time of death, police are merely basing this theory on the inactivity of the 3 victims' phones.
Yes. It's quite bizarre why the pathologist didn't conduct an autopsy time of death report.
As a rule, the more bizarre a thing, the less mysterious it proves to be.
Well, this statement from Mr. Tate's girlfriend, Sarah Saunders, coincides with the phone records that show that she rang him at 6:44 p.m.
Hello, babe, where are you?
I'm working, ain't I?
The call went on for 4 minutes.
Look, I'm sorry about what I said earlier.
Yeah, listen, I can't talk at the moment. I'm with some people.
The call ended at 6:48 p.m. So he, along with Rolfe and Tucker, were killed sometime after that. Just then, Constable Bird rudely dumped another pile of witness statements onto the table in front of us.
That's the last of it.
Thank you, Constable.
We don't need any help from you.
Why, of course you don't, Constable. Crime has only tripled in Essex over the last 2 years. Yes, you seem to be doing a bang-up job of it here.
Before Constable Bird could retaliate, his mobile phone began to ring. And I saw Holmes's eyes immediately lock onto the caller ID.
Hello? I told you, I'll bill you later.
He's quite an unpleasant fellow. Now, what have we got here? Look at this. It's a witness report that says a driver named Mr. White saw the Range Rover at 5:15 p.m. while travelling on the A127. He notes seeing 4 men in the car, not 3. Looks like your theory of the gunman travelling with them could be right, Holmes.
Of course I'm right.
There's a report here that says that the police found the bodies at 6:30 a.m. That's an hour and a half before the farmers discovered them at 8 a.m. It doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't they mention this?
Because they're constructing a case to fit a story, and a story half told presents only one side.
Holmes and I headed out to visit Craig Rolfe's girlfriend.
I've already gave my statement.
But we're not police, madam. We're consulting detectives.
Is there a difference?
What can you tell us about Mr. Rolfe's meeting last night?
Craig said he was going with Tucker and Tate to meet some guy they call Mickey the pilot. This Mickey was bringing over £16,000 worth of cannabis from abroad. So, me and Craig go to drop off £7,000 at Tucker's home, which was Craig's investment in the deal. On our way out of his house, we see Mickey driving in.
Was anybody with him?
Actually, there was some guy with short dark hair. He was younger than Mickey though.
And when was the last time you saw Mr. Rolfe?
When he picked me up to take me to Lakeside Shopping Centre, I was going to get something to wear for that night.
Do you remember what time that was?
Yeah, about 5:45 p.m.
Very well, thank you. We can't seem to identify a continuous timeline. She says that Mr. Rolfe left her to pick up Tucker and Tate at 5:45 p.m. Yet the witness report of Mr. White notes seeing 4 men in a car at 5:15 p.m.
So, either the witness statements are wrong or the police reports are off. Without a basic timeline for these events, it's going to make it near on impossible to find a killer.
This case is not about who pulled the trigger, but more who paid for the trigger to be pulled.
It was the height of the rave scene and Clubland was hit by a wave of drugs. A queue of teenagers stretched around the building of Raquel's nightclub. as a large, intimidating bouncer manned the entrance. The bouncer in question had spent some time in prison, and upon his supposed rehabilitation, he had moved to Basildon, Essex. Holmes confidently approached the bouncer and said,
Good evening. Might I have a moment of your time?
Piss off.
It seems you lack the basic fundamentals of communication.
What do you say, mate?
Holmes, this is not the time for a lesson in etiquette.
I beg to differ, Watson. My good man, I have but a handful of questions. Now, if you could muster enough brain power to string a few vowels and consonants together, then we could refrain from the inevitable conflict that is about to happen.
Look, you toff. Get out of here before you get hurt.
Have you ever heard the phrase, par for the course?
Oh, dear.
Right, that's it.
The bouncer had made the mistake of engaging in combat with a man who can literally see the future. By this, I mean that he can both predict and estimate what they will do in combat before they do it. Holmes himself was a student in mixed martial arts and the walking embodiment of the Sun Tzu Art of War book. Holmes held the bouncer's arm in a firm lock and had already broken 2 of his fingers.
Now, where was I? Ah, yes, par for the course. This phrase means what is normal or expected in any given circumstance. It is to say that you are predictable, and so are your actions. And this is why you find yourself in this embarrassing situation.
All right, mate. I got it. Let go, eh?
I trust you are aware of the recent Rettendon murders.
What are you? Oh, Bill?
No, none of us are Bill. I'm Dr. Watson, and this is Sherlock Holmes. We're consulting detectives with the Essex police.
Now listen here. I seek to find the killers of these Essex boys, so any information you can provide me with is much appreciated.
Let me tell you, whoever killed them done the world a favour.
Did you know the 3 men?
We were best mates. Well, for a time.
And go on.
I met Tucker here at the club. He ran a security firm. He was the minder for Nigel Benn.
The boxer?
Well, not the greengrocer. Of course the bloody boxer. Anyway, he come up to me and said,
I can get you proper money working security at raves, mate.
We made like a partnership. We were mates.
And what about Mr. Rolfe and Mr. Tate?
I met Craig through Tucker. He was a bit of a sly one. Walked around with a chip on his shoulder, if you know what I mean.
Yes, I believe we do.
Anyway, not long after I met Pat Tate, he was a unit.
Unit?
You must excuse my learned companion. He's not linguistically well equipped in the English slang. My dear Watson, he is describing Mr. Tate as a unit, as in his size, meaning he was a big, muscular man. Please go on.
Yeah, well, Pat Tate had become a name in Essex. After escaping from court when he was being sentenced for a robbery, he weighed off the officers guarding him, then jumped the dock and hopped on the back of a motorbike. Anyway, they called him eventually. Then he done his bird and came out.
His what?
His bird. Prison time.
Oh, I see. Go on.
Anyway, Tate came out of prison and latched on to Tucker, and the 2 of them spend most of their time taking drugs, talking shit, and messing about with the birds.
Birds? They went back to prison?
No, they're birds. They're girlfriends. Are you even listening, mate?
Oh, I understand what you're saying. Please continue.
Yeah, well, Tate convinced Tucker there was a lot of money to be made here at Raquel's. Instead of taking a cut from the club's drug dealers, he suggested Tucker start supplying himself. Tate had made the connections in prison, and they started to import drugs from Europe directly, cutting off the middleman.
And you were a part of this?
Look, I run the door, nothing else. But things started to get out of hand. Tate was throwing his weight around, threatening everyone, and Tucker and Ralph even murdered a geezer.
Murdered? Do the police know this?
Oh, there's no proof. They made it look like he OD'd. I couldn't take it anymore. I walked out the club the night that Leah Betts died.
Leah Betts, the teenage girl who died from an overdose. Yes, I remember reading about the incident last month in the paper.
Miss Betts' death was connected to the Essex boys?
Yeah, she died after taking ease supplied by Tucker.
Ease?
Ecstasy, Watson. You were saying?
Well, Tucker had got a dodgy batch of E's from Holland, so it could be something to do with that. All I can say is I walked away.
And yet, here you are.
Well, they're all dead now, and I'm just filling in for a friend on the sick.
Anybody you know who might want these Essex boys dead?
Yeah, everyone.
Thank you for your assistance. Oh, and I suggest you get your fingers seen to. Nothing urgent, just a hairline fracture.
I sat on a deck chair upon the beach, watching the rough tide wash in and out. It was a very cold day, but I was determined not to let that spoil my one day out at the beach. After all, I'd been waiting to visit the seaside town of Southend for the past few months. Holmes and I had spent the last 9 weeks travelling back and forth between London and Essex, working on the case, which resulted in very little progress. During that time, the newspapers had been detailing the graphic details of the Rettendon murders from drug smuggler turned informant, one Darren Nichols. He had admitted to being the getaway driver on the night of the shooting, and his testimony would free him from jail time, as he had named the two killers.
Will the defendant please take the stand?
It was Mickey Steele and Jack Holmes.
The two men were shortly arrested and were awaiting trial. The sea air clears all the cobwebs away.
If you say so, Watson.
Holmes had been rather subdued in the last few weeks. It wasn't so much that he'd given up on solving the case, but more to the notion that the Essex police were not committed to resolving the crime. He sat quietly looking out to sea. I take it you read today's paper this morning?
I scanned the front page while you were reading it on the train, yes.
You saw Detective Dibley got his men in the end?
I suppose. Puts a nice bow on top of his retirement. Everything fits into place, or has at least been orchestrated into place.
What are you implying?
Nothing directly, but indirectly. So you remember when Detective Dibley said...
Now, they're all very well-known drug dealers in Essex. In fact, our drug intelligence unit had them under surveillance.
If they had Tate, Tucker and Rolfe under surveillance, then how could these men possibly be shot to pieces without any prior knowledge from Essex police?
Yes, I do agree many things don't quite add up. But the fact remains that Steele and Holmes appear to be the shooters.
What lies behind appearance is usually another appearance.
I take it you don't think they're guilty?
They're drug smugglers. Of course they're guilty, but not of murder.
How can you be so sure?
Because the only evidence the police have is Darren Nichols' word. A word of a known liar, a police informant, a supergrass, saving his own skin from a drug trafficking conviction.
You don't think Nichols himself could have been the shooter, do you?
Not likely. That young man wouldn't know which end of a shotgun to hold. The problem is, the police are so invested in Nichols' testimony that they are not following other potential leads. And one has to ask, why is that?
You're not saying that the police are somehow involved in this murder, are you?
I'm saying a lie can hide the truth, but it can't change it.
It wasn't until 1998 when the two men, Mickey Steele and Jack Holmes, were sentenced to life imprisonment. Over that period of time, Sherlock had slowly lost interest in the case, mainly due to the lack of cooperation from the Essex police on following up potential leads.
Verdict today is concluded following the trial of Michael Steele and Jack Holmes, both sentenced by High Court Justice Alan Braithwaite QC, who sentenced the men to life imprisonment for the triple murders of Patrick Tate, 37, Anthony Tucker, 38, and Craig Rolfe, 26. This lengthy two-year trial that started in 1996 finally concluded today following the testament from then getaway driver Darren Nichols. Nichols now award for the Witness Protection Programme for his own safety. Jack Holmes barrister Jonathan Sedgwick QC plans to appeal the verdict.
Sherlock switched the television off and walked across the room to the window in silence. Case closed.
Do you remember that rather rude policeman, Constable Bird, we met at Essex Police Station in Basildon?
Remotely, yes. Well, what about him?
He was arrested for drug trafficking.
Well, I can't say I'm completely surprised. He gave off a more criminal vibe than an officer of the law. How do you know this?
Lestrade informed me.
I thought you'd lost interest in this case.
Not in the case, just how it was being investigated. Constable Bird has an informant. Would you like to take a guess as to who that might be?
No, not Darren Nichols.
The very same.
Well, how did you know it's Nichols?
Because when his mobile phone rang, the caller ID displayed the name D. Nichols. Now, this meant nothing to me at the time, but since then we have had Nichols step into the picture, painting his version of what happened that night.
Well, the jury obviously found it a very convincing story.
That's because they were not offered an alternative version.
So you think Steele and Holmes had nothing to do with the murders?
Maybe in some way they were connected to the execution, but then again, maybe not. Like I said in my original deduction, the killer was a professional, not some mere plastic gangster. He carried out the task clinically, leaving no trace. Well, almost no trace.
Sherlock smiled to himself as he lit his pipe. You know who the killer is, don't you?
That I do.
Well, are you going to tell me?
Very well. You'll recall that upon arriving at the crime scene of the Range Rover, you stepped on a stick that broke.
Oh, what's that? Yes, I remember, just a random stick.
There was nothing random about it, my good man. I noticed that the stick you had stepped on was crossed over another stick.
So?
So these sticks were placed perfectly adjacent to the Range Rover. It's impossible that they had somehow fallen into that position. No, that formation was by design, man-made.
Like two crossed swords?
Exactly.
So this symbol is what, a calling card?
The symbolism of the two crossed swords pointing up means ready to fight, and two crossed swords pointing down means the fight is over. I believe that it is in the latter that the gunman's message was intended.
That still doesn't explain who your shooter is.
Doesn't it? Tell me, Watson, what is the badge of an expert sniper marksman in the British Army?
Two rifles crossing one another.
Right you are. And who do we know to be a sniper that is now a hired gunman?
Sebastian Moran?
Right again, Watson.
Colonel Sebastian Moran was a renowned sniper in the British Army until receiving a dishonourable discharge. Thereon, he had fallen into employment with none other than Sherlock's arch-nemesis, Professor Moriarty. I haven't heard his name since the case of the empty house.
Yes, one that almost cost me my life.
Moran had attempted to kill Holmes by firing his rifle from the vacant house opposite our 221B residence. Holmes now stood at that very same window staring across to that house. Holmes, I must say, symbolism of crossed sticks is hardly firm evidence to name Moran as the killer. You need something more concrete, like a matching footprint from the crime scene, or the missing shotgun shell.
Watson, you should think less and see more.
And with that, Holmes calmly turned around and exited the room. As always, there was something cryptic in Sherlock's words, so I wandered over to the window to where he'd been standing and looked across the street to the empty room in question. And there, upon the window facing me, scratched into the glass, was a cross, and beneath it, resting on the ledge, was an empty shotgun cartridge.